Hi guys, it's Blackie and welcome back to the Ground Pounder series. In part one of this, I showed you my double butt pack on a LBE set carry system. I gave you a vague overview of it. In this one, it's going to be a rough loadout to show you the adaptability of the system. Now, this was the nucleus that later on I would adapt the concept, the adaptability and everything to create my Blackbird system of the rucksack, the haversack, the side patches that I sell today. This was the nuclear of it because from it I learned how to make things work and adapt to the situation quickly and easily on a given rig. Now, this is a reshoot because I've already shot this video. I had it all ready to go, and on Sunday it was supposed to post, and it posted, and for some reason there was no sound on it. There was sound on it whenever I edited it. There was sound on it when I checked it at the end. There was sound on it when I uploaded it, but somehow in the mystical wisdom of the internet, sound just disappeared. And so I am reshooting it now to try to cure that problem. So let's get started. What we have here is an H pattern of suspenders, a military duty belt, a series of pouches. You have a butt pack up high, a butt pack down low, canteen, etc. We're going to take each one of these sections right quick, and we're going to talk about what I typically carried in it and why. And we're going to start out with the top. On the top up here I have got a U.S. Army compass pouch. Now I'll pull this off right quick and show you. This rode on a strap on the actual harness. Okay, these small compass pouches I'm carrying up here on the top, I'll typically put it on my right hand side facing downhill because I shoot left-handed for any kind of range. We'll get to firearm accompaniment a little bit later, but right now I'd put it up here. If I was carrying something I was going to shoot on my right shoulder like a shotgun, I'd switch it to this side. Okay. In it, when you open it up, I had that time a Boy Scout clear base plate compass like this for land nav. Sometimes I'd have pacing beads with it, sometimes I did not. And then I either had like this. This is a first aid bandage, you know, the type for military carries. This would also quite often interchange out and be put into it a triangular bandage. If I needed a sling or something like that, it would usually be like this and carried the same way. Either one of these would interchange and allow me to carry that compass. This padded the compass and kept the compass safe from bangs and stuff like that, and me taking my gear off and on, etc. And usually up here this close to my face, it was better protected. I'm more likely to keep from, you know, I may bang an elbow or bang a hip, but banging your face you kind of notice. So putting it close to my face was a place to protect it. Okay, here you see the upper haversack. We'll deal with that in a minute. The lower, the two M16 pouches on the sides. This was the quick grab bag. This was that snacks, that was that odd piece of gear, whatever you just need to hang on to, that's where it went. Now, on either side of it, up close to it, could be another compass pouch. Now, this one is one that I've got, and it's got shotgun ammo in it, because my typical carry at that time was a shotgun. We're going to show it in a little bit. But if I was wearing this rig, it would normally be right here beside the M16 pouch on the front for quick and easy access. This is another one that is a fire kit that was set up and would often be going with this M14 pouch. Now, my very first videos I did for my channel way back when, if you go look in haversacks, you're going to find where I used this as really my first haversack, because I would carry it on here and be a fire kit, backup gear, stuff like that went into here. And then whenever I got to camp, this main set would be hooked to a tree. These two pins would be pulled and this would come off and a strap would be attached to the back, and this functioned as a haversack. This small fire kit, which has got a secrets tin in it, that was used to keep stuff dry, small lighter, tenders, things like that, would be attached to the side of the M14 pouch as a small fire kit. So in essence, this was my takeoff haversack right there. And back in the early videos of haversack, you'll see where I'm using this a lot. Okay, put that in there for the moment. Now, for water, I carried a canteen on my belt. During the heat of summer, this would be moved, and possibly a second canteen would be in this place, or more likely than not, I would not be carrying that. I would actually be carrying a 2-quart canteen like this one on a strap, so I could just sling it over my shoulder. I live in a very water-rich environment, so utilizing this one was my primary drinking, or let's say this was my primary drinking. If it's a long trail and pretty good ways between waterways, I would drink the 2-quart. The 1-quart was my backup. Whenever this started getting lighter, because as I'm drinking out of this is getting lighter and lighter as we go, right? Because I'm thinning this one down. When this one got empty, I started looking for my water source. I would then use this canteen to drink on till then. When I found my water source, I would use purification tabs, and I would completely fill up this one and have drank my fill this one up, because it took 30 minutes for them to process. That way I didn't need additional water for 30-40 minutes, and I could get back onto the trail. So that was my water divvying right there. When we get to cook kits in a minute, then we'll talk about different. But the cook kit and this goes together. But it was either 1 or 2 or a 2-quart, depending on the need. Now, let's go to the top pouch, the top rucksack up here, which is my top butt pack, but I think of it like a rucksack. In here went the soft stuff. Let me show you what that loadout was. Okay, up here in the top one, I would usually have, today we call it a shamag, but this would normally be a large piece of cloth and some sort of large triangular bandage of a little thicker material than a shirt material. This had multi-uses. I used it for everything from a light pillow. I used it as a bandage. I used it to sacrifice for tenders to get fires going. I just used a lot of it. I'd go to the craft store and get me a 4-foot by 4-foot square and make me one of these. These would go into. The clothing that I carried was a couple of pair of U.S. Army socks and a t-shirt. Now the typical way that this would be put in there was a t-shirt would be laid out like this, folded in half. Then the socks would be laid like this, and then it would be rolled up to here. The inner shirt sleeve would be folded in, leaving just the outer sleeve, and we got it up here pretty close. The top would be folded over, and the sleeve itself would be turned inside out to anchor the whole unit together, just like that. That went in. At night, I would take off my wet shirt, which was a U.S. Army jungle fatigue shirt's what I wore. I would take this off. These things are great for summer activity here in the deep south, but they suck to sleep in because of the way they bind up on you. So I would put on that t-shirt, the dry socks. My wet shirt would then be transformed. It would then be taken, the shirt would be laid out. Let me get my sleeves just right. Shirt would be folded in half, just like that. I would fold it down. The two sleeves, sometimes stuffed with a little bit of pine straw or something, and then this would be rolled up. That formed my pillow for ground pounding, was the shirt. That way I had easy access to it during the night if I needed to grab a hold of it for whatever reason, and in the morning I knew right where it was. This became my pillow. Also up here in this pouch would be anything else, like my leather gloves would right up in here if I was not utilizing them. Okay? So that would be the top. Also in the top, as you can see, it's lined up here with the bottom. This is also on the side of it where things like an entrenching tool would be anchored. If I was needing, for whatever we're going to be doing, carrying an entrenching tool, I either had a folding entrenching tool, which may counterweight the canteen and be on opposite, or attach this upper butt pack. Also, I could carry a stiff handle like this. A machete wood hook, the old original canvas ones like this, which this one up here was one like that as well, have a row of grommets on the edge of the flap. This is where you could lock in the old World War II holsters, stuff like that. Machetes would be put down this side. This allowed me to have flexibility. It hooked to the side like this, going from the top pack down to the bottom pack, and allowed me to flex while holding onto this kind of tight hooked at the top and loosely hooked at the bottom, so it could flex and move with me and didn't bind me up. Also carried in one of the M16 pouches was usually my only cleaning kit. My cleaning kit consisted of one of those socks and a bar of soap. I would take the sock and just drop the bar of soap down into it. That way when I want to take a bath, all I had to do is dunk the whole thing and then use the sock as a wash rack. And then whenever I was done, take the bar of soap out, rinse out the sock, hang it up and let it dry. Tomorrow when I get ready to break camp, pick it up, roll it back together and put it back in the pack. That's the way we rolled back then. Okay, we've got that. We've got the top semi-secured right here. Let me go ahead and pull out these two because we've got to talk about them again in another text in just a second. And we'll put the shirt in there right now to fluff it out. Just like this. Okay, now between it, you have a set of straps on the bottom of the butt pack. You also have a set of straps on the bottom of this one. To this one down here is going to go the bug net. We'll get to that in 1 second. Okay, so on the bottom of the bottom butt pack, we'll take our bug net. We're going to get into this in a minute. We're going to fold it in half and it's going to be attached underneath the butt pack. Therefore, it'll act like a bottom frame and hold the butt pack kind of stiff. Get it situated like I want. Right quick. Stuff it under there. Stuff it under there. And then cinch those two straps down snug to hold it. Bug net won't be hurt sitting down there. It won't hurt the back of your legs. Now we'll open up the bottom rucksack. I keep saying rucksack, but it's butt packs, okay? Tell where my mind is. These have a pull-out liner for extension. I usually just left them stuffed in. And I'm going to put my stuff into waterproof gear. Now the bottom one down here, this was my pantry. This is where my cooking stuff and all went. Okay. In the bottom butt pack was my kitchen. Depending on what I was expecting to eat, that kitchen varied. So we're going to cover a little bit of that variation for a minute. First off was always the canteen cup. You already know what that is. I'm not going to pull that out. But the canteen cup. I also carried folded up aluminum foil, heavy aluminum foil. That allowed me to make other things I needed at the time. Go back and look at my canteen cup cooking series. You'll see a lot of that. But I also carried some other things with me. So if we're going to fry fish because we're doing fishing, or maybe we're squirrel hunting, we're going to be whatever. One of my favorite pans to carry was a U.S. Army mess kit pan. Now in it I could carry various sundry things, and if you go back and look in my playlist, I have showed you how to make a wooden handle, that locks into here and makes this a rigid frying pan so it doesn't fold easy. Usually was carrying the standard U.S. Army utensils, a fork or a spoon. Occasionally I'd get lucky and even carry a knife, various things. I carried a knife for other problems. We'll get to cutting tools in a minute. But as you can see from mine, I've fried in this one a few times. Okay. Frying in it, I needed some sort of oil. And also the top pan, I've showed a video on how to turn this into a heater or a light cooker as well by hooking a stick through the middle of this and using it to keep food warm. One of my favorite things to do in frying fish is I would make up a drying rack. And drying rack would simply be just 2 pretty good sized sticks and a bunch of chopstick sized limbs that I'd shaved all the bark off, so just bare wood, laid up there as a drying rack. So I could lift out of hot oil, taking a fork and a stick like I showed you in a recent video, picking them up like tongs and holding them a minute and letting it drip dry, and then sitting it on top of that to drip dry and cool off. And therefore I would, not get greasy food that way. But it was a trick that I like to do. Also, carrying oil or something, these small bottles that you get at the liquor store for adult beverages worked real good. Now yes, this is glass, so you had to use a little common sense and don't be throwing your pack and stuff like that. But I used this stuff successfully for a long time, and this stuff was available. This one is full of cooking oil, and this one happens to be a Jaeger. They didn't have Jaegers back in that day that I know of, but we would find specific bottles to make sure that that was going to be, let's say, cooking oil or something. And you put tape on it. These small Crown Royal bottles hold salt and pepper or any other spice you want to carry. Another favorite way to do was to take old medicine bottles and repurpose them into, let's say, Old Bay or chili powder or whatever. Whatever you enjoy. Now for carrying individual portions of food, like for example, for doing fish, we would carry a batter, a dry, flour-like batter that you're supposed to put fish into. We'd carry a plain old brown bag. You would open the bag up. Here's one of them little old lunch bags. Back in them days, every grocery store had a oodle of these. You'd put the flour into it. You'd then drop the fish into it, roll the top down, and shake it to fully coat the fish or the squirrel or whatever it was, and pull it out. Now the remaining flour would be turned into hush puppies. A lot of times we'd use hush puppy mix or fish batter to do that, so we could make fish, hush puppies to go to fish, whatever. So we had multiple uses, but a plain old paper sack is what we used, and we got done. This would go in the fire. Poof. Another thing we did for a little larder. Now this is similar. This is my larder I got from my good friend Dakota of Dakota Outdoors that he sells on his website, and it's got small screw top tubs inside of it for carrying small portions of flour or whatever. But back in our day we did the same thing, but we weren't as high speed. We used baby food jars like this. They're fairly tough. Yes, again, you got to use your horse sense. But what we do is we'd take an army sock and we'd stack them up inside of it. So let's say I would put rice or oatmeal or whatever it is I'm going to be using, put in here. And also I could carry lard this way. If you didn't want to carry oil in certain times of the year, it was just better not to carry oil because of the way it acted. We'd carry lard. We'd run them down in the sock like that, twist the sock around, and then we'd turn it back over itself. Get my hand down in there. Old hands, Boop, boop, boop. Boop, boop. It was a lot easier when I was 17. Spin it around, grip it, and then pull the sock back over. Just like that. And that double insulated it. You put something between it to keep them from clacking together, and that was a way to carry it as a larder. This would go into the rucksack on top. Now, what foods we were carrying? Again, That was for frying. Canteen cup, we did a lot of stuff with just a canteen cup. Box things like back in our day, macaroni and cheese came in a Kraft box, remember? And it was powdered cheese, not the Velveeta liquid cheese like we had today. And that worked out because you could do half. You would take half of it, half the cheese, roll the rest, put the rest together in the inside plastic wrap and roll it down tight, fold this box in half and use it to carry it again. So you get 2 meals out of one for one mere woodsman. Also things like this, like Knorr and stuff, had little instant soup. These were used a lot. You just drop into a canteen cup. And things like hash. A lot of breakfasts were hash and stuff like that. We would take the can. If it was a liquidy stuff where you could cook it in the can, we did that without even dirtying up our pots or pans. We'd simply open the lid up where we had a handle to pick it up. You know, open the lid up, then fold the lid over to give you a thicker thing to grab a hold of, and we'd sit it in the edge of the fire next to the coals and stir it every so often until we heated it up without having to dirty up our pots and pans. So hashes, stuff like that was very common. Traveling with a traveling companion, we'd make like chili mac, where we would take macaroni and cheese and a thing of Castleberry spaghetti, Castleberry hot dog chili, which didn't have beans in it. And so you would bring the same thing and I would bring one. So like on Tuesday night we'd have chili mac, and we would make it because that was too much for one person to eat at one meal, and so we would share it between us. And then on like 2 days later we'd make the same thing again, but this time we'd add a lot of spices and change it up somehow. You know, there were ways to work it out. And then of course you had good old Vienna sausages. Now this can size right here, back in that day, Castleberry made in this exact same can, you could get beef stew, you could get Brunswick stew, you could get chicken and dumplings, you could get spaghetti, and there was one more. And you could also get beanie weenies and 2 or 3 other things came in this size can. They were made for kids' lunch boxes back in the day. These got into our camping a lot because it was a quick, easy way to do variety. And it was easy because once you got done eating, you took the can and threw it into the fire. And tomorrow when we're getting ready to break camp, we'd stomp them flat because they burn, they ain't going to attract ants or whatever. Put them back into, usually we carried something like the bag that a loaf of bread comes in, or a small garbage bag to clean up garbage and track out. So that was real light and easy to carry out, no weight. And finally, yes, there were bush pots. This is my bush pot from way back when. It's actually heavy gauge stainless steel. And I don't even want to know how many meals I've cooked out of this thing. It was shiny stainless steel. And what it was a Civil War type corn boiler that was made for reenactors that I modified. If you look at the back of it, you see where part of the handle was. It went from there to there, and on the lid right there. And so this worked fantastic as a small one-person bush pot. So that's what rode in the bottom butt pack. It was the groceries. It was the cooking stuff. I wouldn't carry all this cooking stuff. It was, what are you going to be eating? What is the cooking utensil you need to get that done? And that's all I carried. And 9 times out of 10, if it was something I could get away with just a canteen cup and some aluminum foil, a little of this, a little of that, make a skewer up or something, that's where it went. Now how about things like meats, jerky, summer sausage, stuff like that, a lot of that. And then actually in the winter, when it was cold camping, that's when you saw bacon, that's when you saw ham steaks, that other stuff, because the daytime temperatures were not getting above, say, 40 degrees, and so it didn't matter. You know, our rucksacks and our butt packs are basically like a refrigerator at that point. And so once we got to camp, we knew they'd be safe and we were going to thoroughly cook them. So that's what we did for food at that time. Now, let's shift and talk about bedding. Okay, bedding. What was your shelter like, and etc. The basic shelter, and don't worry, in part 3 you're going to get to see all this set up, was one of these heavy vinyl U.S. Army ponchos. I mean, this thing's probably 2 pounds by itself. These were out in Korea and Vietnam, and I'm here to tell you they are bulletproof in a thunderstorm. You're not getting any water through it. It might come around it, but it ain't coming through it. And these were tough. This is one of mine from back then. They last, they do great. And if you can find one of these, and Germany used one very similar to this as well, they were worth it if you're looking to carry one for a tarp. However, I'm going to tell you, modern nil Cylon is a whole lot lighter. It may work just as good, but if you're into the old nostalgia, this is what we had. So I would use this. Now, what did we do for warmth? Well, you got to remember when I'm going. In the early spring and in the early fall, the nighttime highs are going to be, the nighttime lows are going to be above 65, usually above 70 where I'm at down here. This is going to vary greatly from where you are. And so you might need to take this with a grain of salt. But nighttime lows like right now are somewhere like 78, 75. And so during the height of the summer, there were a lot of nights the nighttime low wasn't even 85. It wasn't even 80. It might be 82, 83. And the ground has been heated because we have such long hours of sunshine. And you've got 100-degree temps. And they're 14-hour days, 13, 14-hour days. Yeah, you know what I mean? The sun hasn't been gone for very long. And so the ground is radiating heat. So you just don't need nothing to get in cold. And so that is why a lot of times it was just a simple layer. Now I've done said I'd be wearing that jungle fatigue shirt. Alright, I'm set up. It's time for bed. I would take off that jungle fatigue shirt, take a little bath with a rag to get rid of sweat, etc. Clean the feet, etc. Air a little bit, put the pants back on. I didn't carry extra pants, and I'd put on fresh socks and that t-shirt to sleep in. Okay? Then we bloused our boots. Now you old guys remember this, young guys may not know it. But what it is I would take I typically walked around with it all the time. This wasn't special just for the night, it was all the time. What was called bloused boots. And that was you'd put the cuff of your pants leg into the top of your boot, close the boot around it, then lace the boot up and run the laces around to hold it snugly closed, and then you would pull the excess pants leg down around it. This kept ants, bugs, and stuff from crawling up your leg, which was a real factor down here. And at night, it kept stuff from crawling up as well. I would tuck that t-shirt in. So now the only way they're getting to me is through the arm openings or the neck openings, and I can feel that usually. So it kept cut down on ticks and stuff like that. So what did you need on a hot night like that? Usually, remember that 4-foot square I talked about? This was it. Not this one, but something like this shamog. It had to be just big enough that I could just throw it over me like this and just trap a little bit of upper body warmth. I don't care past my waist because my legs are going to be fine. They're still in my boots and they're still in my pants. My pants are actually damp from all day sweating, so therefore they're actually cool. You wanted to be cool. You wanted your legs a little cool. It helped cool you because the ground still felt real warm at 5:30 in the morning, you know. And so being able to just throw something like this over me was more than enough, okay? If it was going to be a little bit more than that, it was a poncho liner is what we carried a lot of times. These were very prized. A little bit more. Then we would do the transition over to, like I did, a U.S. Army sleeping bag cover, which is a snap closed, looks like a sleeping bag made out of canvas. And I've demonstrated that in my videos. Go back and look at the cowboy bedroll, and I show one as well as talking about one. That was my summer, or actually spring and fall bag. I could get into it and it would just trap a little extra body heat, including my legs. Okay? And it ain't much bigger than this. Okay? And then finally, but what about a sleeping pad? That varied greatly. If we were in a situation where we're around pines, which are a lot down here in the south, I would not even carry anything but maybe an old piece of a poncho, an old piece of a shower curtain, just something about the size of a sleeping mat like a kid gets, you know, for kindergarten, just about that wide and about 5 feet long, just enough to go from above my head to about my knees. And I didn't care about my feet down there. It was just to protect my hips from dampness or moisture coming up. I also had taken a U.S. Army pad like this, and I had cut it shorter. So I had taken it up to the edge of that, taken all this off, so the pad was only between these two straps. I was a fairly narrow guy, and so I could get away with that. And then I cut the length down so it ran from my head to just about my knees. That was it. So that when I laid on my side, my knees would be up on it and keep my knees from laying on the ground. My butt, my back, my shoulders were off the ground. That's all I needed. Okay? This, cut down shorter, would then have the poncho liner stuffed in the middle of it and put here, right in the middle. Now, I'll show you in a minute how this would line up. You would then grab the buckle, bring it over the top, and buckle it in. Okay, as you can see, here are the two straps that are on the pad itself. I would have that poncho with the whoopee or just the shemagh inside of my little pad and rolled up, and you see here are the actual two straps. I've run the strap down and it goes through the top handle of the bottom butt pack and then back up. This would secure it together and keep it a nice tight pack. Now let me show you wearing it. Okay, as you can see, and I'm still that much too wide on either side. You can just see it sticking out on either side. But if I shortened it down, it would be in the same silhouette as me. This allows me to twist and move and it stay with me. So that as I move, it moves. I can touch my toes, so to speak, and it would flex and move with me. Now, the belt buckle, I have intentionally put it off center. The belt buckle is actually here. That is so that right here you could stuff a piece of gear, like your gloves. I learned this from an old veteran. He said, always put it off to the side. Especially when you're laying on your belly and people were shooting at you, you didn't have to raise up to get it. You could just unhook it while laying flat on your belly. And he had a point there. So this way I've got a place I could take a piece of gear or something like that and just stuff it right there for a quick grab right there, like a pair of gloves or something, because I'm doing a job and I need hands free, and then I could get it back quickly. It worked really well like that. Okay, the final points of the loadout. 1, fishing. A lot of times it was a hobo reel like this that'd be attached somewhere to the butt pack in the back, probably the top one, to make it quick and handy for fishing. Okay, something like this. All this is, in one of my early videos I show how to do this. This is a dog food can. This is an old broom handle. You run it down, and then I put like a 2.5 inch, 3 inch deck screw up through a hole in the middle. And then you go get these red lids around where you find pet food at Walmart or the drugstore, the grocery store or something. They have these lids to snap onto your pet food, put it in the refrigerator when your dog don't eat it all. That, you just cut a center hole out and slide it down, and it allows you to put your tackle inside of it and still have all the line and everything on it, so you could have a castable reel set real quick. Next, hat. Old Blackie didn't have this wonderful hat back in the days. Blackie wore a boonie hat, is what I wore back in them days. Now this one is brand new and hadn't been broke in properly, and it would probably take me 8 or 10 years to get it right, but trust me, when I get it done it'll look a lot like that other one. But it was a boonie hat's where I wore back in them days, and there'd be certain little bitty things I'd put in the rim up here for quick access as well from time to time. Now, cutting tools. As I've said before, a K-bar or a old hickory butcher knife was my #1 choice back in them days for a field knife to carry the field. I didn't know anything about bushcraft. All I knew was woodscraft, and I knew a lot of the old woodsmen that I looked up to carried these knives, so that's what I wanted. My chopping tool of choice to carry, if it was a lot of vines and stuff, it might be a machete. If we were going to be cutting trees down to form a cabin or something like that, or some other big thing that I'd be carrying, a saw, a buck saw, or an axe, depending on that job. Standard carry besides that was just this old kukri, one of these. This was a chopping tool, splitting tool, draw knife tool, etc. Digging tool. It did all of those jobs. And that's one of the reasons it won my heart, because it was toting less gear and still being able to do the job. If you notice on the back of it, I've got through the frog a 6-inch mill bastard file to put a little bit of tape on. And I took the as issued sheath, and I just took a pair of heavy khaki that I happen to have, and I put it over, rounded it, glued it in place, sewed it up the back the full length, and then glued me a piece over to keep the seam protected. I took the original frog that carried it, split it in half, and just laced it on there and tied it down real tight. And then I put that 6-inch mill bastard in there so I can sharpen it in the field. The belt knife of choice was the K-bar. That the pocket knife that I carried was usually a K-bar 1607 or a buck 110. All kinds of woods work was done with a buck 110, and the usual duty job was, I did have a small Swiss Army knife. I think it was a Tinker or something like that I'd picked up, or it had the all metal scales on it, and that usually rode with the mess kit, or it rode inside of the cook section, because it was primarily used for opening cans. It was a tool set that also had a knife blade on it, as far as I was concerned. It was only later in my endeavors that the Swiss Army knife became such a shining thing to me. But at that time, it was pretty much, that was its job. It was the tool kit, and it was the can opener. The buck 110 or the K-bar 1607, which look a great deal alike, the K-bar is just a lot thinner, was the go-to pocket knife. For a specialty, I would quite often carry, like my granddaddy did, a granddaddy Barlow in a carrier, because this was the fillet knife. Okay? Not that I can't fillet with that old hickory butcher, but the granddaddy Barlow with that thin blade and that long narrow profile and that gut handle was just perfect when it was razor sharp as a fillet knife. And so I have cleaned a lot of fish with a granddaddy Barlow, and that was our primary food source and foraging down here, was usually going to be, sorry, dropped the lanyard, was usually going to be fish. And so we ran trot lines, we ran drop lines, etc. Now, for defense and hunting, and I do not use that term lightly, you had a lot of, this was after the Vietnam War, there were a lot of poor people. There were a lot of people that came back from the war and had PTSD and had problems. You had a lot of people that got into drugs and alcohol down here in these southern woods. And so being out in the woods, you might encounter somebody that meant you ill harm, so it just made sense to have something with you. Plus, there were a lot of domestic dogs, hunting dogs and whatever, that had gone wild. They weren't afraid of people, but they were vicious and would attack you because they were running wild in packs. And there was a bounty put on them to kill them. And so when I remember rabies was so bad, they'd put a bounty on any dog. If it's not wearing a collar, kill it, and we'll pay you a bounty for it. And so you needed something out there, because, and plus the fact of snakes and etc. So as many of you know, for the bulk of my time in my early career, it was a cap and ball revolver rode with me. I liked the challenge and I was good with it. And yeah, I was showing off a little bit because I had modern. But just a cap and ball properly loaded, maintained in the field, I could do anything I needed in my little thing. The long gun of choice, of course, was the single shot. And I have my original single shot that I had since I was 4 years old. It was my great-granddaddy's and my granddaddy's and mine. And that was my first woods companion. But it's a good deal longer than this. This one is the more shorter youth length barrel with the adult stock on it. And this was just a perfect size companion. I put a sling on it, and you can go back to my videos for 15 or so years and you're going to see this popping up a lot, because I carried this a lot back in them days. Single shots was just rugged and reliable in the outdoor environment and handled anything that I needed to do out here in the field real easy. Ammunition would be carried in one of these pouches on the belt. It would then be pulled off whenever I was putting my gear up, like you see there. I'd get to the campsite, we'd select it, I would build and create my camping area, and that would be either put down to be part of a pillow for me or as a tied to a tree, and then that M14 pouch would pull off. The strap would be hooked to it and be put around my waist, my shoulders as a haversack. The ammunition would be pulled off, go on to, and me and the shotgun would do our roaming. Of course, we'd have the knives on us. That Buck 110 was always in my pocket. That was the go-to knife. I viewed the Swiss Army knife as the specialty knife. Today, I carry a Swiss Army knife, but that's how time and things have evolved. Now, I've got one more little clip to show you right here, and it's where we're going to show how we modified that mosquito net to work. Show you that, and then in part 3, we're going to set it up, and I'm going to show you my setup. That's coming in the near future. Okay, guys, so now we talked about modifying a piece of gear. Here's what we're doing. We're taking a U.S. Army mosquito net that goes over a cot, and we're going to cut it. Back in the day, I modified one like this so I could have a little bit of bug protection up under a poncho, using it as an ultralight kit. Now, the thing you understand is this is not full size. I'm sure you could improvise it depending on your size to do it. But all I'll need is about the width of this table is what we're going to use. And it comes down, we begin cutting. We've laid it out, that's the top edge up there, and we folded the ends out. And I've started cutting along this bottom edge. Now it's not going to be a nice pretty even cut because I'm using shears. But it doesn't really matter. That width is enough because when you're laying there you only need about a couple inches of clearance over your head, and you're under a poncho tarp, so you don't have 4 foot of clearance, right? This is something that you would roll out of the way, do what you were going to be doing, and when you're ready to go to bed, you lay down and threw it over you. We're going to show that in a minute when I put up the poncho and put some sticks up to show you how this is deployed. But I want to show you how we actually create it. We're going to cut down about 3/4 of the way, and then we're going to angle up and come about 1 foot from the end, okay? Meaning that the foot down here where that square is right there, we're not going to go to the very top, we're going to come about 1 foot down from the end. So you've got like a foot box down there. Once you get into this, you want it to cover from about your knees up, leaving you a space up here at your chest where it's not touching you anywhere, so you can lay there and not be bitten by insects. If you put your arm up against it, they can bite you through it. So you want to be clear. Why not cover your legs, Blackie? Because we wore our pants blouse, which means we put the end of our pants into the top of our boots and cinch it up. So there's not a pathway there for bugs or something to crawl up our legs. And so it's relatively sealed off, relatively. Okay, well, Bear is helping me. If you'll hold, we're going to go about a little bit more right here. And again, this is not precision science. You sure? I'm sure. Alright. Enough to cover. Now what I want is this big section to go about from, say, your belt buckle to over your head. Alright, now. So I'm getting way off the edge of the thing here. Now I'm going to angle from here upward. Down here at the foot, it don't angle so much. Meaning to come down about 1 foot or so, right about there from it. And I saw these modified. I talked to vets that modified these back in Vietnam to go over their hooches or whatever. Now, this wasn't used so much in combat because this will tangle you up. And the guys didn't want to carry no more gear than they had to. The bottom line was it was just a way to keep the bugs off of you. And if you were in a slightly more rear area like a forward fire base or something like that where you're building a hooch, This would be a way to keep bugs off of you, or at least limit it. Okay, so there's the cut. Now the rest of this is good for products, and we're going to show that in an upcoming video. We're going to make bags and stuff out of that. But what you're left with is a cut down version. If you get on that side and hold that one. See, that whenever we open it up, would be about like this up underneath the poncho. So I've got enough room and it touches the ground. I don't want this terrible tall. I want it where it touches the ground all the way around to kind of seal it down. And we'll discuss that when I show the actual layout of it. But this is how we modify it. We cut it so it's about, say 2.5 feet up here at the top, and then we come down about waist level and then we taper it up to the foot, so you got about a foot at the bottom. That's the shape of it. Okay guys, hope you've enjoyed the video. Sorry if it was so long, but it's a lot I'm trying to wedge in here. And sorry for the delay. Part 3 will be coming pretty soon, and we'll go and set all this up and show you how I actually ran my little camp. I hope you'll stay tuned for that. That'll be part 3 in this ground pounder. Till next time guys, I'm Blackie wishing you safe journeys. Have a great day guys.